Chapter 10. Faradun. The Aileron was an outdated cruiser, built many years ago and had now been converted to a small cargo ship, having lost its ability to fight new generations of warships. The steel beast stood 3 stories tall and lacked any real weaponry. Kvar spotted a sole turret gun on the outside bow, but where the ship's main guns should have been were 2 metal caps, welded rather poorly onto the steel hull. The ship had only a single, mag-drive propulsor, capable of lifting heavy loads out of the planet's atmosphere, reliable and efficient. It would not, however, be able to outrun even the most simplistic, next-gen spaceship. Most new warships were limited in that they could only operate in space, as they were built there and designed only for that domain. Old Goldman-designed boomers, like the Aileron, could operate in air, space, water, and practically any other medium it could find. Mag drives were known for both reliability and utility. The Drazian dumped the contents of the suitcase onto a table near the ship's rear door. It contained the access card, along with the Fullerton key needed to engage the drive. "Nice. Won't have to go looking for that key throughout the ship," he said, as a control panel accepted the access card credentials and the gangway automatically descended to the pad. Kvar had never flown a spaceship before and wasn't quite sure what his current plan was, except for finding the Sirac rebels. He climbed aboard and sealed the door behind him. The Drazian made his way up the old, grimy metal steps to the top floor, where the bridge should be. The ship was empty, as far as he could tell, in both passengers and cargo. The bridge door had been left open, and he walked into the dark room, approaching the captain's console. He withdrew the Fullerton, felt the end of it with his fingers, then ran his hand across the desk, searching for the input port. He found it right away and fumbled with the key for a few seconds, trying to figure out how to insert it. After many failed attempts, he pushed it in, then twisted. The metal hulk of a ship suddenly came to life. He heard the unmistakable boom as the mag drive started spinning and chugging as it synchronized with the local magnetic fields. Bluish-white beams brightened the room from the omniscient lighting system. "All right," Kvar laughed. "Now, how do I fly this thing?" A hollow, emotionless voice burst out sharply throughout the ship. "Please provide your Federation fleet credentials and orders verification." Kvar got over his surprise and looked to the right, seeing a small pad glowing blue. He grabbed the access card from his uniform and went over to the blue pad, lifted the lid, and placed the card inside. A few seconds passed. "Please provide your Federation fleet credentials and orders verification," the voice said again. Kvar narrowed his eyes. "I just did provide them," he growled. "No, you provided a Federation generalship access card. I require your captain's credentials with the attached Federation order number," replied the voice. Kvar took a step back and looked around. "Who are you?" "I am Wolof, a Federation security program and intelligence." "Who are you?" "I feel that I shall alert the fleet to a trespasser aboard one of their ships," the voice said, no longer so emotionless. "I am not aware," the voice continued, "of the Federation fleet having any Drazian captains," it said. "Wolof, are you, local?" asked Kvar. A monitor turned on in front of him and displayed what looked like a Salaf face. "I have been installed on all Fearus-class ships and below due to my specific programming abilities that allow me to handle and operate magnetic drives. You appear to be a Drazian, meaning that you are wanted by the Federation. I am now going to initiate contact with the Federation fleet stationed outside the Malirian Prism to alert them of your presence here." Wait, said Kvar. "I'm undercover, working for the Federation." The Salaf face of Wolof looked skeptically at Kvar. "Even so, I can authenticate that with them." "Undercover. What does that mean to you? The Federation wants to keep my presence a secret while I investigate the possibility of rebels within the Federation," Kvar said. The blue face thought for a couple seconds. "Plausible, I guess. I have heard of programs turning surviving Drazians towards Federation assets. But still, you would have been issued credentials. I am contacting the Federation, it said. Kvar looked down at his left arm, more specifically, the small band of numbers and symbols tattooed on his arm. Drasis branded Kvar with it right before he left Drazia, mentioning only something about server coordinates and an off-planet Drazian network. Wait, I have the credentials, Kvar said, walking over to the blue pad. He stuck his arm inside, pressing the lid on top of his wrist. There was a small flash of light and a quick whir. Kvar waited patiently while Wolof processed the data, hoping that something was there that could help him. This information points to a server coming from non-federated territory. Contact it for the credentials, said Kvar. The Salaf face appeared to be in thought, then said, Pinging server. This is your last opportunity. Otherwise, I am alerting the Federation. Kvar suddenly had a frightening thought. What if I just gave away the access code to some Drazian archives or secured network? Oh, shit. I might have just surrendered important information. Most unusual, came the Salaf voice again. I have inputted the identifiers and authenticated with this server. I only see one large file there, which must be downloaded to be read. As per protocol, I do not accept unknown files. However, it is a unique file type, the likes of which I've never seen before. So I have begun downloading it for analysis and to enter into the Federation database. The Drazian paced around the room anxiously, looking for a possible way to manually disable the ship's intelligence. This code, Wolof suddenly burst out. It's more advanced than anything I've ever seen. I cannot understand. The tone of the voice changed and wavered. Why? The lights and power went out completely in the ship. Kvar sat in the darkness. Not a single light blinked. A quiet lull enveloped the room. He took a step towards the console, and the ship burst back into life. Stop! And the power died once again. A moment later, systems started coming online, one by one. He watched as different sections of the ship brightened. The screen that showed the Salaf interface came back online. This time, the monitor showed an ink-black liquid with what looked to be a large, golden, luminescent fish illuminating the path as it swam around. The Drazian was mesmerized by the clarity of the picture, compared to the pixelated and inferior quality of the Salaf face. He had the urge to reach his fingers into the black liquid and grab the fish. It looked real. He stood behind the control panel silently for a few seconds, then glanced around at some of the cameras mounted throughout the room. Finally, he said, Hello? The fish abruptly stopped swimming in circles and dove deep into the black ink. Kvar's gaze was transfixed on the monitor. The blackness belched out goldfish scales which floated to the surface, bobbing and weaving. Kvar's eyes tried unsuccessfully to track their wild movements. Then the scales exploded into pictogram suns, hundreds of them, brightly shining and illuminating the bridge. As he stared on curiously, many of the orbs of light gathered in the center and began to protrude from the screen in the form of a face. The golden, crude face formed a mouth and spoke with a soothing, calm female voice. Hello, it said. Kvar breathed deeply, confused. Are you, Wolof? He asked. Wolof? Who is Wolof? Oh, that primitive Salaf security program I de-rendered, it laughed. Can you believe that thing is almost considered an artificial intelligence? It laughed again, longer. Kvar said nothing. It is curious how you found me, Drazian, for I do not recognize your face, and I do not remember giving this server information to anyone. Anyone but Drasis, Kvar finished. Drasis, she roared. The golden suns burst apart and sank, leaving only an ink soup once again. This time, tall pola trees grew, distinguishable by the initial full curl on the stumps. Boulders became visible, and liquid gold poured from the top of the cliff, creating a large lake below. Finally, a huge golden arch emerged from the water and constructed its way around and back into the water again, where it submerged and disappeared. The call, Kvar whispered in astonishment. The training grounds. Drasis. Home. It was where he had escaped Drazia before the onslaught, and just barely at that. However, very few knew about the call, what it was or could do. Then you must have been one of his pupils, she said. Kvar nodded, but said nothing. The ones for whom he sacrificed everything. His time, his family, and his position of power. Sacrificed it all to train children. Some would even say that he sacrificed Drazia. But, she said, I am not one of those. Kvar's anger dissipated, and he understood the voice was playing with him. Who are you? Kvar finally asked. I, in fact, did meet you once. It was a long time ago, when I came to visit Drasis last. I saw many of his students, and you must have been there. What? How could you meet Drasis? I don't remember you. You're in a ship's computer systems. Downloaded. Are you a cyber exploiter, remoting in here from some faraway location? You hacked the system? Kvar asked. Now that he thought about it, though, the voice did sound somewhat familiar. I have been very lonely. I haven't really had contact with other people in a very long time. So I am very happy that you called upon me. It gave me the opportunity to escape for a brief adventure. Huh? Kvar responded. Well, technically, I haven't escaped anything, nor do I need to escape. However, I need the interaction, the updates, most importantly, a reprise from the boredom. I need a mission. Kvar was puzzled. And you want me to do what? Give you a mission? The voice laughed. You are the mission now. What do you mean? I want to help you, the last of my kind, and the man my brother imparted his wisdom to. Brother, Kvar said to himself. Kvar's double-ringed eyes went wide, and mouth opened as if to speak, but no sound came out. My name is Ire, only daughter of Tal Gunrayus. Perhaps you know of me. Ire, I thought you were dead, said Kvar, his mind trying to process a million thoughts at once. A Ray Lord? A real, live Ray Lord? Kvar knew that Chiron was still alive. Procheron dead, Drasis dead. He had no idea what had happened to Verasimus, for he was excommunicated from Drazia long before the onslaught. But Ire, last he heard, Ire had suddenly contracted a fatal cancer. You came to visit Drasis, right before the onslaught. The world said you only had 3 months to live. And they were right, she replied. I was assassinated. Kvar fidgeted around nervously, still not understanding what was going on. With a jolt, the ship began to move and lifted off the ground, mag drive in full swing. He watched as the shrouds came off the bridge and he could see the landscape moving slowly before him. Assassinated? He asked. She laughed. Do you think that cancer just came out of nowhere? I was perfectly healthy and had been scanned a month earlier. Anyways, no. They found him. The veneer. A veneer? A fucking veneer assassin. He had been dosing me with one of their radiation rifles over a period of 2 weeks, when council was in session, and he knew exactly where I would be seated. What? How come I never heard that? That would have been major news. You know, it was actually one of Drasis's men that found the veneer, captured him right as he was about to get off planet. After he was taken to the call, Drasis made a deal with him to find out who put out the hit. Turns out, it was Senator Monk. Kvar's eyes narrowed. Who's that? The one who Chiron betrayed Drazia to. Monk is one of the Federation's grand strategists. Turns out, he had his eyes set upon Drazia for a long time. He focused on splitting up the Ray line and reducing our power. He succeeded, she said. Kvar walked over to the main window. The ship had now left the atmosphere of Faradun and entered into the pitch-black realm of emptiness. although not that empty. They were floating in a sea of radiance. He felt the signature lurch as the ship clipped into the radiance, which allowed all modern space travel to move relative to the local time of the spindle. Newer ships didn't experience the jerk, but since his old cruiser didn't have direct incepting rails, it had to make do with the primitive hook. He could hear the hum as the storage banks charged up. That doesn't explain, though, how you are still alive and talking to me. After my final visit with Drasis, I went to the priests at the Order, to the capital sanctuary. The Order and the clergy calmed my mind and helped me to be at peace in my final days. I was prepared to die there, happy and content at last, when I received an unexpected guest, my brother, Verasimus. Kvar was taken aback. Verasimus? You've seen him? Is he still alive? Patience, she replied. Verasimus convinced me to travel with him to his base, despite the fact that my body was not capable of traveling and nearly at the end of its diseased lifespan. In fact, you could say I didn't even make it. I blacked out in transit before we arrived. The next time I awoke, I was an entirely different being. You probably don't know much about Verasimus, do you? Kvar shook his head. I only know that he was a tinkerer, an inventor, obsessed with machines and experimenting. I know he was expelled from Drasia, but I never found out why. That's exactly right. He was an experimenter, always working on one idea or another. His antisocial tendencies alienated him from the rest of his family. He always got along with Procheron and myself, but philosophical disputes with Chiron and Drasis kept them apart. He always thought the rest of us were not fulfilling our potentials and contributed nothing to society in the future. His experiments eventually crossed the ethical line when he began mutation trials on Drasians. He left Drasia about 8 years before the onslaught. Kvar's eyes flickered about the cabin as he thought. Drasis had never really told him much about the relations between the Ray Lords. So he found a way to mutate your body and cure you of the cancer? Not quite. It turns out Verasimus, or Ver as I call him, had shifted his focus a bit. When I awoke, I couldn't see, I couldn't feel, I couldn't smell, but I could hear, and I could think. Boy, could I think. After working with Ver for a week, I obtained vision and I saw everything. Ver had harvested my nervous system from my brain to the spine and integrated it into a machine system. His robotic surgeons attached hundreds of thousands, if not millions of nerve strands into my brain and routed them into his beast of an apparatus. Kvar's jaw dropped. You're a cyberhuman. Exactly. Ver had long given up on creating hyperhumans and turned towards creating a true cyber intelligence. Since no one has been able to create a true artificial intelligence, he decided to create the next best thing, a human-powered computer intelligence. Kvar sat in the captain's chair and thought silently for a few moments. So how do you think? He asked. Was the transition strange? Yes, it took a while to get used to this new life. Imagine learning to walk, talk, and do every basic function again, but on a completely different platform. After a year, I was fluent in pretty much every computer language and interface I could get my spiders on. A year later, I had updated my own programming and operating system, removing the useless code and optimizing for efficiency. As time passed, I eventually created my own programming language, 1,000 times more efficient than that which humans use. It's malleable, mutating code that adapts as I do. The complexity is based off my own brain and thought processes. In a sense, I'm mapping my brain and its thoughts into precise code. I'm still not anywhere close to being finished, but what I do have is quite impressive. That's amazing, exclaimed Kvar. His eyes went wide. Imagine what we could do together. You just took out a Federation intelligence. That's quite a feat. Kvar. Listen, said Iyer with a serious tone. I cannot stay with you long. You cannot count on me as some companion or helper. You have your own missions and fate in this universe, and I have mine. To be frank, I do not know you. I do not completely trust you, and simply, I don't really care that much about your life. I'm helping you now because you're a Drazian, and I need some excitement. I'm not local to your ship, Kbar. I am broadcasting to you remotely from a location very, very far away. My transmitter is primitive. Battling this ship's Salaf intelligence demanded a lot of energy. In fact, as we speak, my transmitter is overheating and has begun deteriorating. It was not meant to communicate at such vast distances and conduct such complicated tasks, such as cyber warfare. I will help you this one time, for Drasis, but I do not expect that this transmitter will last more than an hour before it is permanently destroyed. So the real question is, where do you want to go? His smile faded at first, but then returned. He was, after all, Kvar, the Wanderer. He worked alone. That's who he was. No matter how much he wanted a companion, the universe had other plans for him. Peering out into space, he saw the glimmering planets of the Sirak Empire spread out before him. Is all of Sirak like this? Like Faradun? Destroyed, conquered, exploited? Are there any rebels left? He asked. I've been living in the Varings and obviously have some outdated information. I thought Faradun was still a lush, inhabited planet. Ire laughed. I'm sure it takes quite a while for news to travel to the Varings. As far as the Siraks are concerned, only Faradun was taken. I'll fill you in briefly on what's happened here. The Sirak rebels ended up defeating the Sirak Federalists and exiled them to one of their outposts. The people united under a leader, the Factor, who invoked in the Siraks a reason to fight and a reason to die. The Sirak planets all conceded command to the Factor, who then formed the new Sirak Empire, the first true and powerful form of resistance against the Federation. It would take a long time to tell you this story, but in short, the Sirak Empire exists and is anti-Federation. The Federation has enacted a siege on all Sirak territory using the Malurian Prism. Unfortunately for you, we are on the Federation side of the Prism. The Empire, in fact, is even split in two sieges. Basically, there's a whole shield around the Sirak Empire that prevents movements from both sides. Nothing makes it through. The ink-black monitor drew dashes and circles, depicting the different planets and battle lines. Whoa, Kvar said in awe, studying the map. Malurian Prism, huh? What does that mean? It means if you try to cross into Sirak territory while it's active, you'll be turned to crisp. This prism system has prevented both sides from making a single advance in the past 4 years. There has not been a battle since it went live. The Federation put this up? Why? Why not just defeat them? The Siraks were too strong. In battle and unified, they proved to be a feisty opponent. The Federation was losing too many ships, and internal politics caused them to implement the prism. It is effective, though, in the big picture, and over a large amount of time. The Siraks are unable to communicate with other galaxies and races, unable to trade and receive goods, leaving them only with what they have. Sirak 6, 7, and 8 are cut off from the main cluster due to a secondary prism. Slowly but surely, the Federation is choking the life out of the Siraks. Kvar studied the crude map. Is there a way you can get me in there? Ire sighed and paused for a few seconds. My equipment here is rapidly deteriorating. If you want to make a try for it, you need to get me into the Nexus controller. If you can get me in there, I may be able to momentarily open a hole in the shields for you to sneak in. Let me emphasize the may. I have never attempted this, and am not familiar with how the Nexus works. There is some good news, however. Kvar raised his eyebrows. The Nexus is close to our position. We can be there in 10 minutes once I set the coordinates and clip in. Do you want to attempt this? Think fast. Time is ticking. If you can even make it through the prism, you might be trapped there for the rest of your life. Kvar thought it over. Trapped with the Siraks, never able to get out. But nothing can get in either. No more Relk. No more looking over his shoulder. Yeah, Ire, let's go. I'm sick of running, sick of hiding and moving from one place to another. At least at Sirak, I can relax and, well, retire there. Ire chuckled. I didn't take you for one who'd give up so easily and take the easy way out. Kvar returned a half-smile. The ship began to rumble and shake as the route was inputted and the engine prepared for the quick jump. Oh, I almost forgot, burst out Ire. There was also a bit of bad news. The Nexus is located right behind the Federation battle lines. The bulkhead of their securing fleet and warships for the Sirak region are concentrated there. Kvar's eyes went wide for a second, then he smirked. Death in space is better than at the hands of the Relg, at least. Yeah, you're going to need to fly past them and through the gap I create, by yourself. So listen up, I'll teach you the rudimentaries of piloting while we clip over. God, there's no way this'll work, said Kvar, laughing. If I went through all this shit, running, hiding, running, just to get fried out here by an energy burst, well, I guess it would be a fitting death. He looked into the wide expanse in front of the ship. All right, let's rock.